Okay, wanted to do a second part to the small hung fist video that I did yesterday. Chose a little better position, more lighting. For some reason, when it's on video, it looks really dark. So I wanted to say a couple of things, give a couple of pieces to help with that technique. Okay, the first thing I want to say is when stepping off to the side to do the block. So stepping off the side is not unique to our lineage, even though I hope I know it probably sounded that way. What I was trying to say was that it was something that my Sifu emphasized, stepping off to the side. Every Jiaogao form has that element of stepping to the side. It's not necessarily emphasized, but it's there. When you're in a small tiger, right? In our the very first move of small tiger after your intro, there's a step and then punch. That step is a step off line. It's just that for some people, it's just a step, and then for others, it's actually getting off the line, getting off the center line. There are many, many benefits to that. I could probably do a video just off of that. But anyway, going back to the technique from Small Hung Fist Chaijong. Uh, uh, so here's a couple of details. Okay, one, from the small tiger block, from the block to the strike, it does not have to be simply pulling the hand back. From the block, we've made contact from the punch. I can hook that punch and pull them in. Because remember, I'm still pulling the hand back here. So once I step off, block the technique, I can hook the punch, pull them into the first hit, then run them through, and then hit again, right? So in the form, you could do it two ways. And I've noticed that the other lineages are doing only two strikes. They block, they strike, kick, right? Maybe, well, that's how we do it. I'm sorry. Okay, so in our form, that's how we do it. In practice, when we do the techniques, we often put three techniques together because that's just something that we practiced. Okay, so we're not that much different. It's just that I was teaching from the techniques as we practice them, not as it's done in the form. But yeah, same thing. But anyway, going back to the first block, we hook, right? Put and pull them into the first technique. So that's that part. There's some benefits. I step off to the side, and if the opponent, let's say we both have our right hand in front, you have your right hand in front, you punch me, I block with your right hand and pull you from this position, it's going to pull you off to the side, which throws you off balance. Okay, so that is an additional technique that makes it'll give you more success in the fight, you know what I mean, in the altercation. Okay, so they're stepping off to the side, pulling them into the first hit, which gives your hit more power, whether I'm using the fist or using the willow leaf palm. Instead of 3 hits, you can throw 2 hits. But what about that kicking the hand thing, right? And that's something we really should have covered in Small Tiger. If you study with me, we did cover it, okay? But for a lot of people, there are several interpretations to kicking the hand and then stepping out before doing that thing. Okay, so for us, I block, pull them in, or I just strike on the second punch of the strike. 1, 1, 2. On the second punch, the opponent we assume that the opponent may have blocked that punch. If he blocks that punch, I pull him on that one. Okay? This hand goes for the shoulder, So the first hand blocks the punch. I punch, he blocks, I grab his block, I pull him, this hand hits the shoulder, and then I can either kick him with my foot or I can kick his elbow with my foot. Okay, so there's that technique. There's also, after the block, punch, I can also grab the opponent and kick him on that second technique, which is an additional way of, I guess, modifying the technique. Remember I said there are many ways we can interpret that technique. And then, as I said in the other video, that it's not necessarily a kick, it could be a sweep, right? So there was one other thing I wanted to add, and can't think of it right now. But let me say this really quick. In the form, I noticed some people, when they do that series, some of them are using this and then going 45 degrees. The principle is basically the same, regardless of how you apply the techniques that's going zigzag, right? So for us, it was this. For some people, it was this, but they still went at an angle. When the opponent's in front of you, he has his best balance going back and forth. This is kind of what we train for. If I push you, I can go into a bow and arrow stance and resist that. If somebody pushes from the side, 45 degrees on this side, 45 degrees on this side, while I'm in this stance, it will push me off balance. Okay? More so if they go from the inside. So if my right foot's in front and the strike or the push comes from the left side at an angle, that'll most likely push me off balance. Not so much coming from the right side, but it still could push me off balance. Either way, it's a blind spot. Okay, so opponent attacks from that corner. Yes, I can strike, I can defend myself on that side, but I don't have full effectiveness defending myself at an angle over here. But someone who attacks me from over there, I have a little bit better balance, but I'm not able to defend myself as easily from that side. So it's a blind spot. So it doesn't matter if you attack from this angle versus that angle on an opponent, you still have advantages. Okay, so I did want to say that. And then also, my point of all of this was that you can take one concept, you can take one technique from any of the form, any technique from any form, and extract, I guess, lessons or principles out of them, and then mix and match techniques to get more mileage out of your forms. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, you could do this really with any form. Like I said, I chose two main principles out of this form, but there are many that are in this form, and you can do that out of all of them. And so by substituting techniques, by changing, simply pulling the hand back to a grab to pull the hand back, or a counter grab. Let's say I block the opponent's punch, he grabs my wrist, and I just yank his hand while he's holding onto my wrist. Okay? Or I punch him and he blocks me and I grab his block. Okay, so now, like I said, we have an infinite number of techniques that can come out of just one piece of one form. So imagine if you did that with all of your forms, all of your techniques, all of your forms. I mean, we could be here forever, especially with the vast number of forms that Jiaoga has. So anyway, I just wanted to throw those couple pieces in. But like I said, with the kick, you know, you can either strike, kick, and then strike again, or you can strike, grab the block if the opponent attempts to block the technique, and pull him into a kick and then strike again. So there's many ways that we can get more mileage or get more value out of these techniques. So anyway, that's all I had to add. So I just want to throw that in there. One more thing. In some performances that I watch from other lineages, I think it was maybe South Africa, a Jalga school that I watched. They were stepping forward in full bow and arrow stances. So there's advantages to that as well, using the full bow and arrow stance, and probably most likely if you're watching this video, your school taught the same thing. What I would recommend, or what I would suggest, is keep that if you do it, but speed up the tempo of the footwork. So you're going from a horse stance to a bow and arrow, and then kick. Just speed that up so that you're running through your opponent. The advantages of that is that you have more stability when going forward. You know what I mean? You have more power going forward. So the same way that I threw the techniques quickly, you just have footwork to match the hands. And if you do that, doing full stances, oh my gosh, you'll run right through your opponent. They wouldn't be able to resist that. Okay. Oh, one more thing. I did want to say something. The strikes going forward. So in Wing Chun, they have something called a chain punch. And this is not necessarily a chain punch, but there's a similarity in that. And so the punches can go straight from the guard, right? So I got my hands up, I punch straight. What Sifu taught was a punch and drag. So what I do is I punch and I pull the hand down, and this one pops right behind it. So this punch comes out. As soon as this hand drops, there's one right behind it. So that gives you an element of surprise in your attacks when you're coming out with these techniques. There's another advantage of pulling a hand down. If the opponent blocks, right, he blocks your punch, my punch, instead of coming straight back, my punch pulls his hand down, and then another one comes right behind it. So now I block, I punch, he blocks my punching arm pulls his hand down, and then another punch comes behind it. If he blocks that, I pull that down and then punch. So remember I said there were 2 techniques series that I extract from this form? I extract more, but there are 2 that I really like, and probably because I learned these 2 from my Sifu. The other ones I kind of dissected on my own, but these 2 were done for me, so that's probably why I like them so much. Towards the end of, or towards the middle of the second half of Small Hung Fist, when you're going back, right? Some people are going this way, some people are going the other way. Okay, I'll have to do another video on that series. But this is an important part of what my Sifu taught for fighting as well. And it matches with this, right? This technique right here, this is the counter for it. Did you see how that works? Okay, if you do our version of Small Tiger 2-man set, you'll notice that those 2 techniques are in that form, done against each other. And so when my Sifu taught these 2 techniques from Small Hung Fist, they kind of fit together like this. One is the counter for the other. This technique, even though it's done slowly in Small Hung Fist, should be done quickly against a combination of punches. If somebody's coming at you with a combination of punches, you can deal with it this way, right? Or this way. And then once you do that, the hand comes out. I was never given a name for that technique, but I call it a shadow punch. So we have, I'm sorry, shadowless punch. We have shadowless kick, right? But we also have shadowless punch. So that's the name I gave it because I didn't know the name of the technique. Sifu wasn't really big on giving names. When he did, they weren't necessarily the traditional names, which is why I think some people criticism of the Din Shin lineage is that's not the proper name. Get the fuck out of here. We have the technique. That's what's important, not the goddamn names. So anyway, the flowering, which is what we call this, there may be another name for that. This is a reverse flower. There's probably another name for that. Those two defensive techniques are created for or used against combination punching. But you don't want to do it for long. And so there are several places in Jiaogao forms where these techniques are used, and they're always used right after a counter. Okay, so it's not something you want to spend a lot of time doing. When we used to practice as a beginner, you're in a horse stance, and we did this, right? And then as you become more advanced, they become small tiger techniques, and then you become more advanced, and we reverse the technique. You learn that, and once you learn that, we learn to counter right off of it, and then you counter right after blocking a series of punches. You come right back either with a kick or punch. So that other series is the opposite of this series. Okay. Now, if you know our iron arrow form, this technique is used as well. Okay, this one is used, but it's used with a throw or a sweep right after that. It's not obvious if you watch the form. That's another video. So anyway, but I just wanted to bring to your attention that this technique, the inverse of this technique is this. Okay, and if you do small tiger two-man set, if you do iron arrow, if you do flower fist, those techniques are there, just interpreted a little bit differently. So anyway, just wanted to throw that out at you. And 17 minutes, that's good enough. Talk to you later. Bye.